Emily Carter had always been the kind of girl who blended into the background without anyone noticing. She didn't mind it most of the time. She liked being the quiet one, the one who listened more than she spoke, the one who sat by the window in class and watched the world rather than try to take center stage in it. But on the morning of the regional music recital, she wished more than anything that she could disappear completely. She stood beside her mother.
Nice.
In the hallway outside the performance hall, her hands cold even in the warm building. Everything around her felt far too big. The banners with bold letters, shiny wooden doors, the long list of performers pinned to a bulletin board. Her name sat somewhere in the middle. Not too early, not too late. Just there, like she usually was. Her mother squeezed her shoulder gently and whispered that she would do great. Emily nodded, though she didn't believe it. She wasn't here to win anything. Her teacher had only signed her up to give her some experience, something small and simple. She was supposed to play a short beginner piece, something she had practiced until her fingers knew it by heart. It wasn't impressive. It wasn't exciting. And as she watched other students talk confidently about their complicated songs, she felt her simple tune shrinking smaller and smaller inside her. She looked around the hallway. Some kids were warming up on practice keyboards set up near the wall. Others flipped nervously through sheet music. A few looked completely calm, chatting with parents or friends as if this was just another school activity. Emily couldn't imagine feeling that relaxed. Her stomach twisted every time she heard a burst of applause from inside the hall. The recital had already started. Though she couldn't see anything from where she stood, every clap from the audience reminded her that she would be out there soon, under those bright lights. Sitting on a bench where every mistake would echo loudly enough for the entire hall to hear, she swallowed hard, wishing she could tell her teacher she didn't want to do this anymore. But she couldn't back out now. Her teacher had been so encouraging, telling her that she had a gentle touch on the piano, and that even simple music could be beautiful if she played with emotion. Emily didn't know about all that. She didn't feel emotional right now. She felt scared. When her teacher, Mrs. Kerr, arrived and spotted her, she smiled warmly. Mrs. Kerr always carried herself with the calm of someone who had heard every note, scraped through every wrong key, and celebrated every right one in her long years of teaching. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder and touched Emily's arm. "Now do well," she said in her soft voice, the kind that made even anxious hearts slow down a little. "Just play like you do at home. That's all you need to do." Emily nodded. She wished it was that easy. At home, no one was watching. At home, she could make mistakes and pretend they never happened. At home, she could sit at the piano late in the evening and drift into songs she made up quietly when no one else was listening. But those were private moments. Moments she would never dare to play in front of other people. She practiced the piece one more time on the small keyboard provided in the hallway. The keys didn't feel the same as her piano at home, but she knew she couldn't keep playing it over and over. If she did, she might make herself even more nervous. When she finished, her mother smiled proudly, though she could tell her mom was trying to hide her own worry. Parents always pretended to be calm, even when their children were walking straight into a moment that might overwhelm them. More applause came through the door, and then a short silence followed by a new performer being announced. Emily felt her heartbeat quicken. Her turn was getting closer. She wondered what the hall looked like during the recital. She imagined rows of seats filled with strangers, students sitting in the front with their instruments, judges with pens in their hands, lights reflecting off the piano. She felt smaller and smaller the more she pictured it. She tried to distract herself by watching the performers practicing in the hall. A boy around her age was running his fingers across the keys with such confidence that she felt a bit embarrassed about her own piece. His song was fast, full of energy and leaps between notes. She could never play something like that. She didn't want to either. She didn't like loud, showy music. She liked the gentle kind, the kind that felt like a whisper. A younger girl struggled with her sheet music nearby, and Emily helped her pick up the papers when she dropped them. The girl smiled shyly and thanked her. Emily offered a quiet, "It's okay," and handed them back. Helping someone made her feel a little calmer, even if it was just a small thing. Time passed slowly, but also too quickly. Performers came and went, parents paced the hallway, and the steady rhythm of clapping never stopped. Emily's name grew closer on the list. She felt a strange mix of fear and acceptance. She couldn't change anything now. She had practiced. She had prepared. All she could do was wait. "Do you want some water?" her mother asked. Emily shook her head. Drinking anything right now would only make her feel more unsettled. "You're going to be wonderful," her mother said again. Emily appreciated the words, but didn't know how to explain that she didn't care about being wonderful. She just didn't want to mess up in front of all those people. Mrs. Kerr checked her watch and nodded. "It's almost your turn. Let's move closer to the door so you're ready when they call you," she said. Emily followed them toward the entrance of the hall. The closer she got, the louder everything seemed. The applause, the footsteps, the voices. She tried to take slow breaths like people recommended when feeling anxious. But each one felt tight instead of calming. The door opened briefly as another performer exited with their parents. Emily saw a flash of the stage lights and rows of seats. She caught a glimpse of the piano. It looked bigger than any instrument should look. She told herself it was just a normal piano, but under the spotlight, it seemed like something else entirely. She stepped aside as the family passed and then stood still. Staring through the small gap in the doorway as it swung shut, she wanted to be brave. She wanted to believe she could do this. But her heart was pounding so quickly, she wondered if the whole hallway could hear it. "You've worked hard," her teacher said quietly. "That's all that matters. Remember that this is not a test. It's just a moment to share what you've learned." Emily nodded again. She knew her teacher meant well, and she appreciated every gentle word. But right now, she could barely think beyond the fact that her name could be called any minute. A volunteer stepped out of the hall holding a clipboard. She glanced down and then announced the next name. Not Emily yet. Emily felt both relieved and disappointed. Waiting was the hardest part. The volunteer disappeared back inside, and Emily shifted her weight from one foot to the other, trying to release some of the tension in her body. A boy nearby was practicing scales quickly. In the clicking sound of the keyboard keys, mixed with the soft hum of conversations around the hallway, Emily tried to focus on these sounds instead of her thoughts. Anything to keep her mind from imagining every possible mistake she could make on stage. Her mother placed a hand on her back. "When you sit at the piano," she whispered, "pretend it's just you and the music, not anyone else." Emily wished she could do that. Music always felt comforting when she was alone with it. But the idea of pretending all those people weren't there seemed impossible. Still, she nodded again. She didn't trust her voice to stay steady if she spoke. Finally, for what felt like both minutes and hours, the door opened once more. The volunteer stepped out with her clipboard, glanced down, and then looked up. "Next performer, Emily Carter." The words floated into the hallway like something both expected and unbelievable. Emily felt her knees weaken just slightly. She took a breath that wasn't deep enough and stepped forward. Because she knew she had to. Her mother gave her an encouraging smile. Her teacher said, "You'll do fine." And Emily tried her best to accept those words. She followed the volunteer into the hall. The lights hit her eyes softly at first, then more brightly as she walked toward the stage. Her shoes tapped gently on the floor. She felt hundreds of eyes turned toward her, even though she didn't look up. She kept her gaze on the piano. It sat at the center of the stage, polished and waiting. She felt her heart thudding against her ribs as she walked toward it. She didn't know if she could really do this, but she also knew she had no choice. This was her moment, whether she wanted it or not. She reached the bench and sat down slowly. Her hands hovered above the keys. They trembled slightly, but she placed them down anyway. She heard the faint rustle of someone shifting in their seat in the audience. She heard a cough somewhere in the back. Emily took one more breath and silently reminded herself that all she needed to do was play the simple tune she had practiced so many times. Just a simple tune. She pressed the first key. Emily pressed the first key. And the sound floated into the hall like a small ripple in a quiet pond. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was soft, calm, almost shy, just like her. For a moment, she kept her eyes fixed on her hands, making sure each finger landed exactly where it should. The simple melody moved slowly, stepping from note to note in a predictable pattern. She had played it so many times at home that her fingers knew the path on their own. But playing it here in front of so many people felt completely different. Her palms were W, arm, and her heartbeat echoed in her ears. She could only hope the audience couldn't see how nervous she really was. The hall was quiet, completely quiet. Not even a whisper came from the rows of seats stretching out in front of her. She tried not to think about how many people were watching. She didn't dare look up. If she looked up, the sight of all those eyes might shatter every bit of focus she had left. She kept going, one note at a time, breathing slowly, trying to stay steady. She told herself over and over, just follow the keys. Don't rush. Don't think too much. The melody was simple, but there was a gentle beauty in it. Even she knew that. Her teacher had told her many times that music didn't need to be complicated to be meaningful. Emily liked that thought. It made her feel like she had a place in a world full of louder, bolder players. Still, she felt small sitting there on the stage. The lights above her were warm, though not too bright. They lit the piano in a soft glow that made the surface shine. The polished black finish reflected her hands as they moved. 10 small shapes gliding across the white and black keys. She played the main part of the tune without hesitation. When she reached the gentle middle section, she let herself breathe out slowly, letting some of her tension slip away. She could almost pretend she was home for a moment, just her, the piano, and the quiet air. But then, as she neared the end of the piece, something unexpected happened inside her. It wasn't a sudden burst or a dramatic realization. It was small. It's like a soft knock at the door of her thoughts. She felt the music differently, the simple melody she had been playing suddenly felt too small for what she felt inside. Not because it wasn't good enough, because she knew deep in her heart that she had more to give than the notes. Written on the page, she hesitated for half a second. It was barely noticeable, but she felt it. Her finger hovered over the next key a little longer than it should have. Should she keep going the same way? Should she finish the piece exactly as she practiced? Yes, she should. That was what she had been taught. That was the safe thing to do, but her heart pushed back against that thought. She had played this tune 1,000 times. She knew every part. And tucked inside her was a little melody she had always played quietly when no one was around, something she made up on her own. Soft and gentle and shaped by her feelings. She had never shown it to her mother or her teacher. She had never shared it with anyone. Yet here she was, sitting under the lights in front of a silent hall, feeling something warm and brave rising inside her. Her fingers moved without permission. She didn't play the next note of the original tune. She drifted into the melody she carried inside her. The sound changed. Not sharply, not in a way that felt out of place, but in a way that felt more alive. Her hands moved more freely, no longer tied to the steady rhythm of the beginner's piece. The notes she played were soft but full. They blended into one another like gentle waves. Emily didn't understand what she was doing entirely. She just knew it felt right. The music wasn't loud or showy. It wasn't anything like the fast, complicated pieces she heard other students play. But it was hers. She felt her shoulders loosen. The fear that had wrapped around her chest slowly began to unwind. She allowed herself to breathe deeper. Her fingers danced lightly across the keys, creating a small story only she knew. In the audience, people leaned forward. At first, they hadn't expected anything unusual. Most had turned their attention half away, expecting just another simple student performance. But the shift was undeniable. The melody grew more emotional, more personal. Parents stopped whispering. A few students paused mid-sentence. The judges lifted their eyes from their notes, but Emily didn't see any of it. She let the music guide her. Each note followed the next like a quiet confession. She wasn't thinking anymore. She wasn't worried about the audience or stumbling or making mistakes. She just played. She felt the way she did at home late at night when the house was calm and the world seemed slower. She felt safe in the music, wrapped in something gentle and warm. She moved into a soft rise in the melody, letting it swell just a little like a breath drawn in. Then she let it fall again, letting the sound settle like a sigh. Time became strange, lower and faster at the same time. She didn't know how long she had been improvising. It could have been seconds or minutes. All she knew was that she wanted to stay in this feeling a little longer. Her hands shifted again, sliding into a tender phrase she had played only once before, long ago. It made her think of things she never said out loud, how she wished she were braver, how she hoped people saw something gentle in her, even when she felt invisible. She wondered, very faintly, if the audience could feel a small piece of what she felt. She didn't expect them to understand everything, but she hoped the music reached them even a little, as she neared what felt like the natural end of her improvised melody. She slowed down. The notes became smaller, softer, almost like they were tiptoeing to the finish. Her fingers pressed the final key with care, letting the sound stretch into the air. Then she lifted her hands and placed them quietly in her lap. The silence in the hall was deep. It wasn't the silence of boredom or confusion. It was the kind of silence that fills a room when something unexpected happens, something delicate and honest. Emily didn't dare look up yet. She stared at the keys, trying to steady her breathing. Her heart was racing again. But it was a different kind of racing now. It's not fear. Something else. A moment passed, then another. Still no sound from the audience. Slowly, she let herself lift her eyes. The hall was still. Everyone was staring at her. Not with harshness or judgment, but with focused, thoughtful stillness. It was like they were holding the moment gently, afraid to break it too soon. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Did she do something wrong? Did they not like it? The silence stretched. Long enough for her cheeks to warm with worry. She shifted slightly on the bench. And then, like someone finally remembered how to breathe, the audience began to clap. It started softly, then grew louder. People who had been sitting back in their seats leaned forward, clapping with more energy. A few stood. The applause rolled through the hall in waves, filling every corner. Emily blinked in surprise. She had expected a polite clap at best. She had never imagined this. Her hands trembled again, but for a different reason now. She didn't know whether to smile or hide. She felt overwhelmed, like her chest was too full. She stood up slowly from the bench and gave a small bow. The lights warmed her face, and the applause washed over her in a way she had never felt before, as she stepped off the stage. The volunteer gave her a wide-eyed look, as if she had just witnessed something she didn't know how to explain. Emily walked backstage. Still stunned, she had gone on stage to play a simple tune, but something inside her had spoken louder than the notes she practiced, and somehow, without planning it, she had left the entire hall silent. When Emily stepped backstage, the applause was still echoing faintly through the closed door behind her. She paused for a moment, unsure what to do, unsure how to even breathe. It felt as if the world had shifted slightly, like something inside her had unlocked without warning. A volunteer standing nearby smiled at her. A little stunned, as though she had just witnessed a magic trick she couldn't explain. Emily gave a small nod in return, not trusting her voice. Her hands were still tingling from the performance, and her heart was beating fast. Not from fear this time, but from something warm and strange, something she couldn't quite name. Her teacher appeared a moment later, moving with surprising speed for someone usually so calm. When she reached Emily, her eyes were filled with disbelief but also pride. "I didn't know you could play like that," her teacher whispered softly, as if afraid to break the fragile feeling hanging in the air. Emily swallowed. "I didn't know either," she said, honestly. Her teacher placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "That was beautiful. Truly beautiful." Those words sank into Emily like sunlight warming a cold room. She wasn't used to praise that felt so real. It made her chest fill with something soft and fluttering. Her mother hurried backstage next, her expression full of amazement. She wrapped her arms around Emily carefully, almost hesitantly, as if she wasn't sure whether Emily was the same girl who had walked on stage a few minutes earlier. "You were incredible," her mother murmured. "I didn't know you could play like that. Where did that come from?" Emily had no answer. She didn't know how to explain how the music had pulled her in, how it felt like it had asked her to speak through it when words failed. A faint hum of chatter could be heard coming from the audience. As the next performer prepared to go on, people were still talking about her performance. Emily could hear pieces of their reactions drifting backstage, small comments that made her cheeks warm. Who was that girl? That was unexpected. It didn't sound like a beginner piece at all. Emily didn't know whether to feel proud or embarrassed. She wasn't used to attention. She wasn't used to being the topic of conversation. Usually, she slipped through rooms unnoticed. Like a quiet breeze, her teacher guided her to a small seating area backstage, encouraging her to sit and relax while the recital continued. Emily sat down, clasping her hands together, trying to calm herself. Everything inside her felt like it was buzzing, a mixture of relief, disbelief, and something close to happiness. The sounds of the next performer drifted through the curtain. Their piece was loud and complicated, but it didn't shake the feeling Emily carried. She tried to focus on her breathing, but her thoughts kept drifting back to what she had done. She had played the simple tune at first. She had followed the notes she practiced, but then she hadn't. She had stepped away from what she was supposed to do, and instead, she let the music come from someplace deeper inside. Her, a place she didn't even know had been waiting. She wondered if she should feel guilty about that. She hadn't played what she was assigned. The judges might notice. Maybe she broke some kind of rule. Her stomach tightened briefly at the thought. But then she remembered. The silence of the hall, the kind of silence that felt like listening, not judging. She remembered the way the applause had grown and grown. Wrapping her in a warmth she had never felt before, she had given something honest. Something real, and for a moment, that mattered more than the worry. Not long after, a woman wearing a staff badge approached her, holding a clipboard. "Are you the student who played 2 performers ago?" she asked politely. Emily nodded, sitting up a little straighter. "The judges would like to speak with you briefly when the recital ends," the woman said with a kind smile. "Nothing to worry about. They just want to meet you." Emily blinked. Her heart resumed its fast rhythm. "Me," she whispered. "Yes, you," the woman confirmed. "You made quite an impression out there." Her teacher's eyes widened with excitement. Her mother looked proud but also surprised. Emily couldn't believe it. Judges wanting to meet her? She had never imagined that would ever happen. As the recital went on, Emily stayed backstage, listening to the other performers. She tried not to let her thoughts wander too far, but they did anyway. She replayed her performance again and again in her mind. The tiny hesitation. The moment when she changed the melody. The way her hands felt like they belonged to someone braver. The backstage area gradually filled with performers coming off the stage. Some relieved, some disappointed, some excited. A few glanced at Emily curiously, whispering to each other. She avoided their eyes, feeling a little embarrassed, but also strangely honored. One girl, little younger than her, walked up timidly and stood near her. "Was that you who played earlier?" the girl asked in a soft voice. Emily nodded. "It was really pretty," the girl said. "I liked it a lot." Emily felt warmth spread through her again. "Thank you," she said, offering a small smile. It felt strange to be noticed like this. Strange, but not unpleasant. When the final performer finished and the recital concluded, everyone gathered in the hall for the judge's closing remarks. Emily followed her mother and teacher out from backstage, her nerves returning, but in a different way now. She wasn't afraid the way she had been earlier. She was just unsure of what would happen next. People turned to look at her as she walked into the hall. Some smiled. Some gave impressed nods. Some whispered to each other. She kept her eyes down, but felt every curious glance. The judges sat at a long table near the stage. One of them, an older man with gentle eyes, motioned for her to come forward. Emily approached slowly, feeling both exposed and strangely hopeful. "Hello," the judge said kindly. "Emily, right?" She nodded. Double quotes, "We wanted to speak with you about your performance," he continued. "It was unexpected in the best way." Another judge, a woman, with silver glasses, leaned forward. "Your piece began as a basic level melody. But what you played afterward, that wasn't written in the score, was it?" Emily took a breath. "No. I just felt it. she admitted quietly. The judges exchanged looks, not disapproving looks, but thoughtful ones. That kind of instinct, the first judge said, is rare at your age. It takes courage to step away from the written notes. And it takes sensitivity to shape music the way you did. Emily blinked in surprise. Courage. She had never thought of herself as brave. Not even close. Her teacher placed a hand on her back, encouraging her to stand tall. We'd like to know more about your training, the judge continued. Have you been taking lessons long? Only 2 years, Emily said softly. The woman judge raised her eyebrows. 2 years? That's impressive. Emily felt her cheeks warm. You have a natural musical voice, the older judge said gently. And with guidance, it could grow into something remarkable. Emily didn't know what to say. She had never heard anything like this before. She felt both overwhelmed and deeply moved. We'd like to recommend you for a special mentorship program, the woman judge added. It's for young musicians who show unusual potential. Only a handful of students are selected each year. Emily's breath caught. Her mother gasped softly beside her. Her teacher's face lit up with joy. A mentorship? Emily asked quietly, barely trusting her voice. Yes, the judge said with a warm smile. It would give you access to advanced training, master classes, and opportunities to perform. You don't need to decide immediately, but we would be very happy to have you. Emily felt a mix of shock and disbelief crash over her. She had come to the recital expecting to play a simple tune. Nothing more. She had expected to sit quietly afterward, unnoticed as always. She had not expected this. Her heart thudded with a new kind of energy, a quiet, rising excitement she had never felt before. I'd like to think about it, she said honestly. Of course, the judge replied. Take your time, but know that you have something special inside you. Something worth growing. Emily nodded slowly. Thank you, she whispered. As she walked back to her mother and teacher, she felt like she was floating. Everything around her looked the same, the chairs, the stage, the people gathering their belongings, but inside her, something had changed, something important. Her mother hugged her tightly. I'm so proud of you, she said, her voice warm and shaky. Her teacher wiped her eyes and laughed softly. You surprised us all, didn't you? Emily smiled for the first time that day, a real smile, full of something bright. She had gone on stage expecting nothing more than a simple performance. Instead, she had found a piece of herself she didn't know was waiting. And now, the path ahead of her looked different, new, uncertain, but beautiful in a way she never imagined. When Emily and her family stepped outside the recital hall, the afternoon sun warmed the air, making everything feel strangely unreal. It was the kind of warm day that usually made her think of quiet walks or soft breezes. But now it only made the world feel brighter, louder, fuller than before. Her mother kept looking at her as if she couldn't quite believe what had happened. Her teacher walked beside them with that same gentle smile she wore during special moments in her students' lives. Emily felt caught between a whirlwind of emotions, excitement, disbelief, joy, and a quiet fear of everything that might come next. They reached the car and stood there for a moment, not getting in right away. Her mother finally turned to her. Are you all right? She asked softly. Emily nodded. I think so. You still seem a little overwhelmed. I am, Emily admitted. It doesn't feel real, her mother chuckled softly. It was real. It's very real. I've never seen a room go that silent. Emily looked down at her shoes. She remembered the hush over the audience, the weight of the moment, how every breath felt like part of the music. She wasn't sure how she felt about that level of attention. It still made her nervous to think about people watching her so closely, but she couldn't deny the strange warmth that had bloomed in her chest. When they listened to really listen to her, her teacher stepped closer. I know it was a lot, she said gently, but what you did today was something rare. I'm proud of you. Emily felt her throat tighten with emotion. She had never done anything that made people proud before, not like this. They got into the car, and as her mother drove, the world outside the window blurred past in soft greens and warm shades of gold. Emily leaned her head against the glass, trying to process everything. Her improvised melody echoed in her mind, every note still fresh. She hadn't planned any of it. The music just happened. It felt like something inside her had been waiting for a chance to speak. After a few minutes of silence, her mother asked, "What do you think about the mentorship program?" Emily took a breath. "I don't know. It sounds amazing, but also scary." "That's normal," her teacher said from the passenger seat. "Opportunities like that always come with a little fear. But fear isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it means you're standing at the start of something important." Emily looked down at her hands resting in her lap. Her fingers still felt sensitive, as if the music hadn't fully left them. "Do you think I'm good enough for something like that?" Emily asked quietly. Her teacher didn't hesitate. "Yes, I think you're more than good enough." Her mother nodded in agreement. "You play with your heart. People feel that. Not everyone can do that." Emily felt her chest warm again. But beneath the warmth was a small ripple of doubt. What if today had been a fluke? What if she couldn't do something like that again? The drive home continued quietly after that. Emily watched the scenery roll past as they moved from busy streets to quieter neighborhoods. When they finally pulled into their driveway, she felt a mixture of relief and uncertainty. Her house looked the same as always, calm, simple, welcoming. It felt strange to come home after something so big. She stepped out of the car slowly, almost afraid the moment would fade too quickly. Inside, the house smelled faintly of lavender from the air freshener her mother always used. Emily walked to her room and sat on her bed, the familiar softness grounding her. Her mother knocked lightly on the door before peeking inside. "Do you want something to eat?" she asked. Emily shook her head. "I'm not hungry yet." "All right. Let me know if you need anything." Her mother smiled gently and closed the door. Emily took a long breath and lay back, staring at the ceiling. Her mind replayed the scene again, the stage, the piano, the silence, the applause. She had stepped into something unexpected, something she didn't fully understand yet. After a few minutes, she sat up and looked toward her piano, her old, slightly worn upright piano that sat against the far wall of her room. The keys were a little faded. Some notes had a soft clunk to them when pressed, but it was hers. She walked over and sat down on the bench. When her fingers touched the keys, a familiar calm settled over her. She played the simple piece she had been assigned for the recital, letting her hands find the easy melody. It felt gentle, safe, but then, slowly, her fingers drifted into the improvised tune she had created on stage. The notes spilled out naturally, just as they had before, but now she took her time with them. She explored the melody, letting it stretch and breathe. It felt like she was rediscovering a part of herself. When she finished, she sat still for a long moment, listening to the silence of her room. Then her phone buzzed. She picked it up and saw messages from classmates who had been at the recital. Some had recorded little clips of her playing. Some sent short messages saying how beautiful her performance was. Emily read them with growing astonishment. She wasn't used to this kind of attention. She wasn't sure she liked the spotlight, but she liked the feeling the music gave her. She liked that her playing had touched people. For the first time, she wondered what might happen if she stopped hiding her music. That night, after a quiet dinner, she sat with her mother and teacher at the dining table to talk about the mentorship program. They said, "I don't have to decide right away," Emily said. Lightly tapping her fingers on the table, her mother nodded. "But it might be a good idea to think about what you want." "What if I say yes, and then I mess up?" Emily asked. "What if I can't play like that again? What if it was just luck?" Her teacher leaned forward. "It wasn't luck, Emily. Music like that doesn't just happen. It came from you, and you don't need to repeat it exactly. You'll grow. You'll learn. That's the whole point of mentorship." Emily looked down at her hands again. They seemed so small. She wondered how something so small could create something that made a room go silent. Her mother reached over and squeezed her hand. "You're allowed to be scared," she said, "but don't let fear make the decision for you." Emily nodded slowly. After her teacher left for the evening, Emily sat by her window, watching the sky change colors as the sun set. Shades of pink and orange faded into quiet blues. She rested her chin on her knees and thought, about the future. She imagined taking lessons with musicians who had trained for years. She imagined performing again on bigger stages, in front of more people. The thought made her stomach flutter nervously, but she also imagined learning new pieces, exploring different styles, and discovering more of the music inside her. That thought made her heart feel warm. As the sky darkened, she finally whispered to herself, "Maybe I can do it." The next day, Emily returned to school. She didn't expect anyone to say anything about the recital. But the moment she walked through the doors, people turned. Some smiled at her, some nodded. A few approached her to ask about her performance. "You were amazing." One girl said, "I didn't know you played like that." Said another. Instead, Emily felt her cheeks warm, but she answered politely. She didn't know how to handle sudden attention, but she didn't want to be rude. During lunch, a few students showed her the clips they had recorded. Watching herself play felt strange. She looked calmer than she remembered. Her hands looked sure. The moment looked magical. It didn't look like a mistake or an accident. It looked like something real. After school, she went home and sat at the piano again. The mentorship offer hovered in her mind like a quiet question waiting for an answer. Her mother entered her room carefully. "Have you thought more about it?" she asked. Emily nodded. I think I want to try." Her mother's face lit up with pride. "I think that's a wonderful choice." Emily took a deep breath. "I'm nervous, I know," her mother said gently. "But you're ready." Emily wasn't entirely sure she agreed, but she wanted to believe it. That evening, they contacted the judges and accepted the offer. Once it was done, Emily sat quietly on her bed. Letting the reality of her decision sink in, she felt a tiny spark inside hurl like the first flicker of a flame. Her life was beginning to change. Her music had carried her somewhere she never expected to go, and she couldn't wait to see where it would take her next. The days after Emily accepted the mentorship offer felt different from anything she had ever experienced. Her world didn't change overnight. Her house looked the same. Her school looked the same, and her routines remained familiar. But something inside her felt awake in a new way. Like she had stepped onto a path she didn't even know existed until now. She spent the next week waiting for the program's welcome email, unsure what to expect. She kept replaying the moment on stage, the silence of the hall, the whispers of people afterward, and the judge's words telling her she had something special. Each memory felt bright, like a small spark that refused to dim. But the spark also came with doubt. What if she wasn't truly talented? What if her performance had been one lucky moment? What if she disappointed everyone? These thoughts drifted through her mind during quiet moments, especially at night. She often found herself sitting at her piano, pressing soft notes just to calm herself. One evening, a message finally arrived. "Welcome to the Young Musicians Mentorship Program. Your first session will be held next Saturday at Riverside Art Center. Please bring your sheet music and be prepared for an evaluation performance." An evaluation. The word made her stomach twist. She had never liked being evaluated, but she reminded herself that she had already done something far scarier, playing in front of an entire hall. Her mother hugged her. "This is exciting," she said. "And whatever happens, you're doing something brave." Her teacher promised to help her prepare. "They aren't expecting perfection," she reminded Emily. "They want to understand your style." Still, Emily practiced every day. She played the simple tune again, just to reconnect with its calmness. Then drifted into her improvised melody, soft, flowing, honest. Each time she played it, it grew a little, stretching into new shapes. The night before her first mentorship session, Emily barely slept. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the house. Her heart thudded with nervous energy. But as morning came and sunlight filled her room, she took a deep breath and told herself she could do this. Her mother drove her to Riverside Art Center, a large building with tall windows and brick walls. As they approached, Emily saw other students her age entering with cases, violins, flutes, guitars. She tightened her grip on her sheet music. Inside, the building felt open and bright. Posters on the walls showed past concerts, smiling students and music instructors who looked confident and accomplished. Emily felt small in comparison, but she also felt something else, a quiet excitement. Fluttering inside her, they checked in at a table where a kind-looking woman handed her a name tag and directed her to a large rehearsal room. Emily stepped inside hesitantly. Several students were already seated, tuning instruments or warming up. A boy practiced scales on a violin. A girl tested chords on a guitar. A pianist, a few years older than Emily, played confidently at one of the room's two pianos. Emily found an empty seat near the back and sat quietly, watching the others. She wondered if they all felt nervous too. A tall instructor with calm eyes and a warm smile entered the room. The chatter quieted. "Good morning, everyone," he said. "Welcome to your first mentorship session. My name is Daniel. I'll be guiding this group throughout the program." Daniel explained how the sessions would work. They would perform individually, receive feedback, learn new techniques, and explore their musical style. Emily listened closely, her heart racing as he spoke about the evaluation. "Who would like to perform first?" Daniel asked. No one moved. Emily hoped he wouldn't pick her. She wasn't ready. She needed more time. Daniel chuckled softly. "No worries. I'll start with volunteers then." A boy with a confident expression stepped forward and played an advanced violin piece. Emily watched in awe, his bow moving smoothly, each note sharp and controlled. Another girl followed, singing with a soft yet steady voice. Then a pianist played an upbeat classical piece, perfectly clean and polished. Emily felt her nerves growing. Everyone seemed so sure, so prepared. Then Daniel called her name. Her breath caught. It was time. She stood slowly, clutching her sheet music. Her legs felt light, almost shaky, as she walked to the piano at the front of the room. She sat down on the bench and took a moment to steady her hands. Daniel gave her an encouraging nod. "Whenever you're ready," Emily played the simple tune first, just as she had at the recital. The notes were gentle and steady. She could sense the room settling, listening, but she knew she couldn't end there. Her fingers drifted into her own melody, soft at first, then full. The room grew still. She felt the familiar warmth moving through her, guiding her hands. She didn't try to impress anyone. She didn't try to be perfect. She just played what felt true. The melody flowed like a quiet stream, rising and falling with emotion. She let herself sink into the moment, the way she had on stage. When she played the last note, she lifted her hands slowly. The room was silent. Daniel took a breath, his eyes thoughtful. "That," he said softly, "was beautiful." Emily felt her cheeks warm. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "That wasn't written, was it?" Emily shook her head. "No, I just felt it." Daniel smiled gently. "Good, that means you understand something many musicians take years to learn. You don't just play notes, you express." To let the words sink in. "You have a natural musical voice," he continued. "But we'll need to work on technique too. Expression is powerful, but when paired with strong skill," he paused, "you'll be unstoppable." Emily blinked, unsure how to take in such a compliment. The rest of the session went by quickly. Daniel taught them breathing exercises, posture adjustments, and ways to understand music emotionally instead of mechanically. Emily found herself absorbing every word. When the session ended, students packed up their things. A few approached Emily. "That was amazing," one girl said. "How do you come up with melodies like that?" A boy asked. Emily shrugged shyly. "I just listen inside, I guess." She wasn't used to people being interested in her, but she didn't mind it. For once, it didn't feel overwhelming. It felt nice. On the drive home, Emily couldn't stop smiling. Her mother noticed. "You enjoyed it," she said warmly. Emily nodded. "I really did." That night, she sat at her piano again, but this time with a sense of direction. She practiced scales Daniel had shown them, then let herself drift into her own music. Weeks passed. Emily attended every session. She learned new techniques, discovered new styles, and even collaborated with other students. Sometimes she felt frustrated when she couldn't master something immediately. Sometimes she doubted herself, but every time those doubts surfaced, The memory of that silent hall reminded her that she had something worth nurturing. One afternoon, Daniel approached her after class. "I have a question," he said. "Would you be willing to perform in our student showcase next month?" Emily froze. "Me?" "Yes, you." Her heart raced. "But I don't know if I'm ready." Daniel smiled gently. "You're more ready than you think." She went home and thought long and hard about it. The thought of performing again scared her, but the thought of not trying felt worse. She said yes the next day, for the next several weeks. Emily worked harder than she ever had. She practiced after school, late into the evenings, even early in the mornings before breakfast. She shaped her improvised melody into a more structured piece, adding new touches, refining old parts, and letting it grow naturally. Her mother listened from the hallway sometimes. Smiling quietly, her teacher visited to help her polish technique, and Daniel guided her gently during sessions, pushing her without overwhelming her. Finally, the day of the showcase arrived. The auditorium buzzed with excitement. Families filled the seats. Students warmed up backstage. Emily stood quietly, trying to calm her nerves. When her name was called, she stepped onto the stage. This time, the lights felt warm, not frightening. This time, her hands didn't shake this time. She knew why she was there. She sat at the piano, took a gentle breath, and placed her fingers on the keys. Then she played. Her melody flowed, soft and emotional, rising and falling with confidence she didn't know she had. It carried everything she had learned, everything she had felt, everything she had become. The audience listened silently, just as they had before. But this silence felt different. It wasn't surprise, it was respect. When she finished, the applause came like a wave, not just polite, not just impressed, but warm. Genuine. Emily bowed, her heart full. Backstage, Daniel met her with a proud smile. "See," he said, "I told you." Her mother hugged her tightly. "I can't believe how far you've come," she whispered. Her teacher wiped away a small tear. "This is only the beginning," she said. Emily believed her that night. As she lay in bed, she didn't replay mistakes or imagine worst-case scenarios. Instead, she thought about the path ahead. She didn't know where music would take her, whether she would perform on big stages, write her own compositions, or simply keep playing for the joy of it. But she knew one thing for sure. The girl who had once been afraid to play a simple tune had found her voice, and she would never lose it again.